So Crash Bandicoot 4 is finally here. This was actually one of my most anticipated games this year. The moment the trailer dropped and I saw the direction this was possibly going in, I was super hyped. The game looked colorful, the gameplay mechanics looked pretty awesome, and it was a platformer, and I'm always in the market for a great platformer. This game was marketed and positioned to be a true follow-up and sequel to Crash 3, completely ignoring all the other games that Crash has been in throughout his history. Now don't get me wrong, I love Crash 1 through 3 just as much as anyone else. I grew up with those games, but I can't help but think that this was a huge missed opportunity that Toys for Bob and Activision could have played around with. Maybe have some crossover potential with other versions of Crash throughout the history, but maybe that's just me. Now, personally speaking, after the PlayStation 1 era, I did not follow up with minigames after that. I remember playing the GBA games, especially Huge Adventure, and having some fun with those, but as far as the later console releases, I was getting my fix with Ratchet & Clank. It wasn't until I stumbled across this man's channel that I decided to give some of these games a shot, and it's fair to say, these games are not bad at all. I found personal favorites in Twinsanity and In Trance for the GBA, but the general public seem to not have interest in Crash. Now, since Crash 4 deals with alternate universes and dimensions, you would think they would play around with Crash history a little bit more, but nah, maybe DLC in the future. So in terms of the story, I'm not going to spoil much of it. This game is still very new and I would hate for you guys to watch this and not experience the story for yourself. So I'll give a brief rundown. So after the events of Crash 3, Cortex and Entropy are plotting a way out. During this, Uka Uka rips a hole in time and space. This makes Cortex and Entropy power hungry. And let's just say, Entropy pretty much turns into Thanos. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, so play this game and you would definitely see what I mean. So Aku Aku senses this happening and tells Crash we must hurry up and stop this from happening, and this is what begins our quest. Along the way, we meet the Quantum Mask, and they're a huge part in making sure this threat is taken care of. I love these guys, and the idea of a celestial mask and multiverses, it adds a bit of depth to the Crash universe, and I feel the story was delivered very well. Presentation wise, this game is like watching an animated film. Very fluid cutscenes and great humor. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Okay, first off, this game is extremely challenging, and I will go ahead and say this now. This is probably the hardest Crash Bandicoot game I have ever played. Now, not to say that's a bad thing. I felt the difficulty was genuine. Not once did I feel the game had questionable design or bad mechanics that created artificial difficulty. No, it was very fair on how it displayed its challenge. The game has two modes, Modern and Retro. The only difference here is how the game handled lives. Modern allows you to essentially have unlimited lives, but with the death counter, and Retro is like that old school Crash. You have to find lives and you have a limited amount, and if you run out, well, you get a game over. Now, for my first playthrough, I chose Modern, and I am glad that I did because you will die a lot in this game. Some of the platforming challenges are kind of trial and error, so if you're new to these type of games or just want a smoother experience overall, pick the Modern playstyle. Also, one thing I can appreciate is the circle underneath Crash that tells you where you may land. Super helpful, but you can turn this off in the settings if you want that true old school feel. Now, the true highlight of this game is definitely the different type of mask you get to use. Now, Aku Aku is still here, but honestly, the game does not throw these boxes at you a lot, so most of the time you're only allowed to get hit once. Now, the other mask allows Crash to use these pretty cool abilities that adds to the overall level design and challenge. I love this. One mask allows Crash to shift reality to make things pop in and out. One allows Crash to slow down time. Another one allows Crash to have essentially a super spin, and you also have gravity shifting. All these different playstyles create for some very unique mechanics and did not feel like padding and flow naturally with the game. Like using the time function to cross against different parts of the level or using the special spin across huge sets of land. Really awesome stuff. You can also play as Cortex, Tana, and Dingo Dow, each having unique playstyles and levels. Tana is a badass. I love controlling her and using the grapple hook. Cortex has unique abilities with his gun, and Dingo Dow is just walking destruction. All cool stuff. The stages are simply beautiful. I played this on the PS4 Pro and the game is truly something to look at. Everything flows perfectly and the game is super smooth. I love the visual variety here. They also brought back some of the elements from past Crash games, chase levels and animal riding levels. But honestly, I felt the animal stages were a little underutilized, but no big deal. Also, the game takes more of a Crash 1 approach to level progression. You do not have a warp room, you just go to level, which is fine, but the whole dimension and multiverse theme, I really wish they did more with that. Now, the boss fights here are pretty fun and challenging, but I was a little disappointed by how they did my boy Engine. Engine has always been one of my favorites in the Crash series, and his boss fights are usually pretty epic, but this one just felt Also, I love the battle with Cortex, always a fun time. The boss fights are pretty challenging and will test your dodging skills, so be prepared. Now in terms of completion, you are not collecting crystals this time. Instead, you're just trying to get to the end of the level. Now where the challenge really comes in is trying to collect the gems. The gems is where the replayability is. You can unlock skins for Crash, more modes, and much more. This game would definitely be one I would attempt to unlock things as time goes on. There's also a multiplayer mode, which I haven't tried yet, so maybe one day. Overall, Crash 4 is a phenomenal platformer. This game is definitely one of my favorite games this year and a great game to experience on the PS4 before we move to the next gen. Longtime fans of the series will be pleased to see Crash return to his platformer roots. I still think the team could have done a little bit more with acknowledging Crash past in funny ways, but you may not find an issue with that. Go buy this game. It is amazing. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.